Welcome, teachers. Welcome. My name is Joel Seto, and of course, our organization is called DataWORKS, Professional Development on a Friday. Oh my gosh, thank you guys all for being here today. So if you guys can just put hello in chat so that way we can do attendance. I'm going to introduce you to our host today, our main presenter, Mr. John Hollingsworth, author of Explicit Direct Instruction, author of educational bestseller, Explicit Direct Instruction, 2 different editions, 3 or 5 different continents, currently doing organic grape farming and music on the side.
All right, so you mentioned the book. Explicit Direct Instruction is one of the books, and Explicit Direct Instruction for English Learners is the other one. I'm going to be pulling out lots of strategies, and we're even going to have posters with strategies. They're actually strategies out of these books, so if you really wanted to go out and follow up later, you could. I'm going to be using Edusary. Can everybody see my screen up here, Edusary? Okay, edusary.com. We have almost 1,500 lessons in all content areas from K to 12. I'm going to be pulling lessons out of this database, and it's actually teachers can use it also. Joel, you can send some information about that. So the first thing I'm going to type in here is posters. I'm going to do a search for posters. And these are instructional posters really for teachers. There's other ones for students, but this is our remote learning. I've just clicked on it. I can blow it up either over here, or I can blow it up in the little expansion button here. So now I've blown it up, and you can actually download from there too. So I'm just going to look at you right now. I think we're going to have to use thumbs up and thumbs down as a response right now. Are all of you doing remote teaching right now? Let me see what we've got. Okay, using Zoom maybe, or Google. Okay. All right, so we just came up with a few norms. And the first one is the video cameras need to be on. Now I see some of you got your cameras off now, but we just did actual lessons with students last week. And we had one classroom where about half of the students had their videos cameras off, and it was not very effective. I need to see your lips. I need to see the gestures. I need to see you hold up answers and stuff. And engagement is one of the things we're trying to get. Engagement is a weak part with remote teaching. So I want to have all the cameras on. Okay. Now your name, the second one, I think most of you have your names on here. Last time we had some nicknames and stuff. For me, it's important so I can read your name. So let's have our names on here. Now, we're all going to read the next one together. I'm going to point to it. We're going to read. Ready? Read. Sound muted. This is one of our strategies, by the way. We're going to have students, especially English learners, read with us. In a few minutes, we're going to be reading everything. I see all of you have your mics muted right now. If the mics are on, Zoom will pick up the loudest sound. If dogs start barking with a student, that mic will take over. So generally you have to keep them muted. And the second reason is the sound is delayed about a second. And when we do choral reading, I know some of you will be coming back and I will hear it as an echo, and I just have to ignore that. I know you're reading in full time, in real time, but there's a second delay. Okay, let's read the next bullet. Ready? Read. Eyes on screen. Okay, I expect you to be looking at the screen. Joel, we just did 2 lessons the other day. I have not my child, but a high school student near me, and I watch the lessons almost every day, and a lot of time is spent on the telephone and doing other things. So I expect the eyes to be looking at me or looking right at me while we're talking. You're going to have to use your mouse as a pointer where to look. In the classroom, we would be pointing up here someplace where to look, but we need to cue the students there. Okay, so let's do the next one. I'm going to put my pointer right here, and we're going to read together. Ready, read. Participate in lesson. So like all of you should have been read with me. I'm looking on the side here trying to see your lips. By the way, I'm going to have to give you a big confession. I have 2 screens. It's almost impossible to teach with one screen because the students are too small. And I've got a beautiful big screen next to me. I can actually see, when you see me turn over here, it's because I'm looking at all of the faces. And then I have my content up here. We've done some choral reading. We've done some gestures. We did these, and I expect all the students to be doing that. And eventually you have to train your students and get them to do it. Joel, when we did this last week, one class participated, they were doing, and the other class, almost none of the students were participating. And I could tell they weren't trained. The teacher now said, we're going to read, we're going to show thumbs up, down, we're going to show whiteboards. So make sure your students are all trained to do these things. Okay, whiteboards is the next one. Do all of you have whiteboards in your classrooms? They're the best to use for answers because when the boards go up, you see all the students in one pass and you know right away where the mistakes are. Sometimes you can even analyze the mistakes depending on what you saw up here. Normally we use sticks, or we call non-volunteers, but the whiteboards are actually statistically better. You're seeing everybody, you know if you need to reteach, and it's a lot better. So Joel, can you hold up something? In the classroom, we want big whiteboards, but Joel is holding up closer with the cameras very close. They can use a piece of paper. It doesn't have to actually be a physical whiteboard. But let's make sure we have the students. I want to see everybody's answers. Okay, unmute. You're going to have to cue the students when to unmute. You've probably done that already. And you can see as the teacher who's muted and unmuted. And we used the chat one time so far. You can use the chat. I actually like whiteboards better, because you can see everybody's answer and it forces everybody right away. But you could use chat if a student has a question or they want a certain type of answer. You could actually use.
John, let's go ahead and do our first checking for understanding question. More of a share. Teachers in your chat right now. Let's see if this works. Is there a preferred method that you, since you're high school teachers, is there a preferred method that you've been using to interact with your students? Is it whiteboard? Is it chat? Is it just random calling, having them unmute and share? Let's go ahead and spend 30 seconds. If you can quickly go ahead and type in there. I kind of just want to get a little bit of a feel from you as I engage with you.
Pick one off of the screen. Pick one off the screen that you're using or you think would help or would actually help more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I see chat in there.
Yeah, with high school students, I'm really finding that that's the thing. What we've done with some of our high school team is that we've kind of conditioned them to respond very quickly with chat. Not like a 3-minute delay. It's literally like 30 to 45 seconds.
Now, the whiteboard we use for short answers, for multiple choice and single word answers. I don't have students write long answers on whiteboards.
Yeah.
Okay, we've looked at this one. So now I'm going to go back.
Yeah, good idea.
To the posters. I'm doing the next one, the student engagement poster. Okay. And if you know, the language objectives for English learners are listening, speaking, reading, and writing. So anything you can do is an EL practice, and vocabulary development is the other one. EL means you're supporting the language, not the content of the lesson, but the language used in the lesson. So this is our first strategy up here. Students need to learn to say new words. So let's read this together. Ready? Read. Pronounce with me. Okay, I think I've seen the lips here. Most people did it. You need to pick new words. Don't have students guess at the words. And phonics fails enough times. It's not too reliable. You need to be strategic. You don't need to do sight words. I might pick on this word engagement because they might read gag if they were reading this cold. So when we pronounce words, I as a teacher always read first. It's the eyes on the word. I'm pointing to it right here because I'm doing reading secretly at the same time, even though I'm doing pronunciation. So I'm going to say the word and you're going to say it after me. Students, this word is engagement. One more time, I'll do it. Engagement. Your turn. Engagement. One more time, let me hear you. Engagement. Are you doing thumbs up, thumbs down? Any classroom teaching? Okay, if you're doing classroom teaching, we should be doing a pair share. Say this word to your partner. If you're remote, you can't do the pair shares. Okay. Okay, now I could call on a couple people to read me this word. I see Julia up here. Julia Thompson, can you unmute and read this word for the class?
Engagement.
Okay. Now, this sounds so simple, but you would be surprised how students mispronounce word. Pythagorean theorem. I heard that one time. And so you need to teach the word students how to say the words. Okay, the next two are track with me and read with me. When you have an academic sentence, like a learning objective, an academic definition, sometimes the questions even, we're going to use tracked reading, which means you read it first. Don't ask the students to read it cold, especially English learners that are struggling readers or any struggling readers. You read first and they have their eyes on the page. You use your cursor to guide them. And you read first and they read after me. So on this page, I might say, creating academic student engagement. Class, your turn. Ready, read. Creating academic student engagement. Now for the class read, you need to say something yourself. And you need to say it to kind of cue it and keep everybody together. Okay, gesture with me. You need gestures. EL EL uses gestures for context clues. It was gigantic. It was enormous. It was minuscule. Horizontal lines, vertical lines. We could also use them to remember things. Today, when we solve linear equations, what do we do to one side? We're going to do the other side to keep the equation balanced. Show me what we need to do with our solve equation. Show me your hands, everybody. We what? Keep the equation balanced. Okay, what do we do to one side? Pair shares, we can't do pair shares because we have to be in the classroom, but you're going to have to provide wait time. The minimum wait time for ELs is 8 to 10 seconds. And we're going to give them a sentence frame. And I'm actually thinking now, students, I want you to practice your answer. You can just say it out loud to yourself mentally, but even say it out loud so you're ready, so you be ready. So pair shares, you could modify, ask the students to say the information. When you say, what's the context clue in the paragraph? You should be saying the context clue in the paragraph is, okay? Or the first step in solving your linear equation is, the figurative language in the passage is, and I've just jumped down to the last one, complete sentences, public voice, academic vocabulary. So if you're taking notes, you need to use sentence frames. And it's not my answer is 6. It's the character trait is, I'm sorry, the perimeter of the polygon is 6, right? And don't let them use it's, no pronouns for ELs. They use pronouns when they don't know the words. Try not to use pronouns.
Okay. John, this section's really good, and you're going to keep going here in a second, but I got to stop you though. John, these are high school teachers, and John, you're going to tell me that you can get high school guys high school kids to respond with you and pronounce with you and track with you? Go ahead.
We do it all the time, and partially is training, and usually we train our students the first day. Write your favorite food on your whiteboard, or your favorite color, let's say favorite color, and I want you to say, my favorite color is, and just practice those sentences. And if we got an example on the board, that this character is obnoxious, I'm going to say the character trait is obnoxious, okay? Or the setting in the passage, and get those words, passage, excerpt, try not to use story. Try to use that academic language. Let me give you a big hint for ELs. The weakest thing for ELs is academic vocabulary. Now, academic is not similes and metaphors. Academic is distinguish, correspond, separate, determine. What I'm calling academic is that generic language that goes across the curriculum. And it's not being taught, because what's being taught in the book is similar triangles, character trait, similes, metaphors. We're actually teaching the content, and we need to teach those other words too and make the students use those. Okay, whiteboards, I'm just going to give you one big hint for whiteboards. When you've got whiteboards up and you're going around, you're looking at them, just write this down. Always call a correct answer first. Don't use your sticks. You don't ever want a wrong answer to come out initially and the other students to hear that wrong answer. Because people they'll start questioning, they'll start thinking. So this is the one time I don't use the sticks. It's still a random call, and you're kind of looking around. So you call a couple of correct answers. And here's a little quote you should have. Students, we're all learning today. If you want to change your answer on your whiteboard, go ahead and change it. But be ready to explain to me why you changed it or what the answer is. And the students, here's one more to put down, they have to justify their answer. Justify their answer. I use the inverse operation of blank because. The character trait is blank because, and you have to have textual evidence or something else. Okay, so whiteboards, correct answers first, and then call incorrect or change answers and give corrective feedback, basically till you've got 100% correct answers. If you have a lot of incorrect answers, it's boards down and you reteach. Have that discipline. When you see 30 or 40% wrong answers, don't start asking. It says boards down. Let me go over this again, and then I'm going to re-ask the question. Okay, so let's get our chat up one more time, and let's write down something interesting we took out of this page that we can use.
So once again in chat, we're sharing one thing that we're able to grab and that we can use. Also, shout out to Miss Black. Thank you so much. Your contributions in the chat are pretty good. I think I got at least 2 good things I'm going to steal from you and use. Very good.
Yeah, I see the first one, gestures for concepts. Now we're using gestures as a cognitive strategy to remember something. We're not just defining a word, we're using to help remember something. Correct answers first, yeah. Academic language, yeah, we need that for sure. No pronouns, it, no. The character trait, the linear equation, the inequality, the check and balance in the Constitution, all right, and complete sentences. Let's get students in complete sentences all the time. And it's not, my answer is A or I wrote A. It should be statement A is a simile because. It's not I wrote A or I wrote B. We're not talking about that sentence. We want the academic language in the sentence. All right, I think we got through that. I'm going to go back to all my lessons. So I'm clicking lessons right here. So I'm going to pick one. Okay, I've got one, oxymorons, a high school lesson. Now, I hope you notice in this thing, when we pronounce words, that's listening and speaking. When we read, that's reading. When we answer in complete sentences, that's listening and speaking. So integrated ELD means you're going to use these strategies when you teach any class that has EL students in it. You're going to pronounce words, you're going to use complete sentences, use the track reading, and then you're doing the integrated ELD for all ELs in any classroom. During designated ELD time, of course, you're going to use all of them also because you're focusing on language specifically, but you can use this in any type of lesson. All right, so I've got the one right here. I blew it up. I've got the little advanced slides down here. I hope you can see it on the bottom. And I can use the cursors. I can use the clicker. All right. Let's just go over a couple things. We're going to read the learning objective. We're going to use our track reading. And we're going to use our pronouncing difficult words. Now, I think I'm going to have you write down in the chat, what word might you pre-pronounce in this learning objective? And look at the words carefully.
All right, we'll give them about 15 seconds to respond.
Yeah, I think we've got it right away. Euphemisms and oxymorons. And euphemisms, it's a pretty weird E-U-P-H. Oh yeah, I guess the PH does have the F sound. Euphemisms, and then the oxymorons. So now I got one more thing in here. Remember, this is content language. Euphemisms and oxymorons, we're going to teach that in the lesson. We're going to have a whole page of content development. This word interpret is some of our academic language. So here's the rule. You can write this down. Define 2 to 7 academic words in every lesson. And just pick words that are already in the lesson. Of course, we're going to use euphemisms, oxymoron, in a couple of pages, but interpret would be a good one. Now, I'm going to do pronunciation here because a lot of students say interpret instead of interpret. So in this case, I'm trying to preempt it. So kids, let's look at this word, interpret. Interpret. Let's all say it together. Interpret. Can you say interpret twice by yourself? Let me see you say it. Okay, let me pick someone. I got John Leary. Can you say interpret for the class?
Interpret. Interpret.
Okay, this next word is now the PH is like F, euphemism. Let's say that. Euphemism. And the last one, oxymorons. It's got an S on the end, oxymorons. I want to hear that little S on the end. Ready? Oxymorons. Oxymorons. Okay, here's one more hint right here. The ending inflections are hard for ELs. Oxymorons, you got to get that S in there. I taught a lesson in math. Wait, any math teachers out there? Raise your hand if we've got math. Okay, the answer was 15/100ths. That's DTHS. I mean, it's almost hard to say. And I actually spent 5 minutes, hundredth, that's hundredths. So you actually have to teach that. The word help, and with a past tense, helped, that ED is very hard to hear for EL. So sometimes you need to actually practice those. So I'm thinking about those ending sounds. Okay, so interpret, and I've got it footnoted, means to explain something. So anytime you give a definition, give an example. So when the teacher wants to interpret your grades, she's going to explain your grades. Okay, explain the meaning. I can interpret or explain what this diagram means. I could do a checking for understanding right here. I'm going to ask someone what interpret means, and you're going to say interpret means. You can just say to explain, but I'd like you to come up with your own sentence. So just time out here. Here's the rules for vocabulary. In this case, we have a footnoted definition. I always give an example, my own 2 or 3 examples. Chanting the definition is not enough. And my checking for understanding, if I'm going to do a checking for understanding, I'm going to ask the students to define it and come up with their own sentence. Okay. And let's just try one right now. I'm going to let you think for a second. Can you come up with your own sentence using the word interpret, meaning to explain? And I see Melissa, can you give me a sentence using interpret?
I interpret that.
Say it again.
I interpret that everyone here is tired.
Remember, interpret means to explain something. So you can what? Interpret a diagram, a paragraph, a chart, a test results, or something like that. Okay.
And then
Anyway,
John,
this is what you do. Now think how EL much, oh wait, okay, now I'm going to read it and we're going to read together. We will interpret figures of speech such as euphemisms and oxymorons. Okay, class, let's read. Ready, your turn, go. We will interpret figures of speech such as euphemisms and oxymorons. Now, if I were in a classroom, I would say, read this to your partner and make sure you're reading it correctly. So right now, I want everyone just to read it on their own and be ready in case I call someone to read it. Joel, I'll call on you. You could be a stumbling student. Okay. And who I got? Luke, I see Luke. Pretend I've got yours. Can you unmute and read the objective to the class? We will.
We will interpret figures of speech such as euphemisms and oxymorons.
Okay, now, very good. Sometimes we give a high five for that. All right, now, let's say Joel is a struggling student. I'm going to use what I call like kind of echo reading. Now, here's another one you can do for a really struggling student. And we've had a lot of students in our classes. This is their first sentence in English because we want them to speak English. Okay, Joel, can you say after me? We will interpret figures of speech. Okay, I think you can see how you do that. Nobody gets out. Even a beginning reader, if they just say one word after you, then everyone's going to participate.
Mm-hmm.
And Joel, you remember in LA, a student came up to me and shook hands. He said, you're the first person I've answered a question in English, and I've been here for 3 years and never answered a question. So everybody answers, but we've got this we call scaffolding, right? We can do that little echo read.
Okay. Now, John, I'm gonna stop you right here because there's a big deal in front of me right now, and this is one of my big issues. I'm looking at the word interpret. When I'm an English learner, John, discuss with us, share with us, help us here, multi-meaning words. If I see the word interpret, that means I'm translating for my mom at the grocery store. That's what that word means to me. Tell me about multi.
I've got 6 or 8 vocabulary strategies here. Write this one is multiple meaning words. I forgot to use the strategy. Let me use the strategy here. Students, let's look at this new word. It's interpret. Let's all say the word interpret. You already know the meaning of interpret, like to translate from Spanish to English or English to Spanish. Interpret has a new meaning today, and here's the footnote. It means to explain something. So when I interpret this page, I'm going to explain what this page means. So time out. The rule is for multiple meaning words, acknowledge the meaning they already know, and then what? Transfer and explain the new word. And we've got lots of confusing words for math. You've got the right triangle, and we've got turning right, and kids get mixed up. Common denominators and a common typical average dog. I had ELs get mixed up on that. So keep your eyes open for multiple meaning words. Do we have any history teachers? Okay. We go to the Senate, we're going to floor the speech, we're going to table it, we're going to take it to the floor. Those are actual multiple meaning words or kind of new uses for those type of words, so be ready for those. Okay, so I did a lot of things on this page. Let's see if you can write something in the chat over there. What was a strategy? I used strategies from this, from my norms page, and a few other things. Gordon, Joel, can you hold up the norms page? So let's hear in chat, what were some strategies we did? Oh, I do see there is a history teacher.
Yes, I'm sending engagement norms to everyone right now, John.
No, Joel, you're going to hold up the poster. You got a red norms poster?
No. Oh, yes, I do.
All right.
No, it's okay. I love it when you put me on the spot during these things. These are great. But I'm going to send everyone a copy of it in a moment, John.
Okay.
It's probably too small on their screens, though. But
so the idea is, what were some of the strategies I used just in one sentence? Yep, pronounce with me, read with me. Let's see. I did a checking, didn't I call a couple people to read? We can write CFU, check for understanding. I did check for understanding. I did the echo reading, the scaffolding with Joel. We talked about the multiple meaning words, yes. Okay, so the bare minimum for ELs would be what? You read first and they read afterwards. At least do that much. Don't ask for a choral read from the class. It's the pre-read. There's a lot of research on this. I think at the University of Chicago, there's a lot of places on reading fluency is when you pre-read, everybody can read it because they're just hearing it right afterwards and their eyes have to be on the words. Okay, now I'm going to ask everybody, are your students reading on grade level, above grade level, or below grade level?
Yes.
On grade level, above, or below? You think about average, and I see a couple belows. Okay. Do not read too fast. If you read as an adult, we will interpret figures of speech as a euphemisms, oxymorons. You've lost the effect. So you do need to slow down a little bit and keep your cursor on it and read it. All right, so this was a learning objective. We spent a lot of time here, but normally this would only be like 2 minutes. All right, so I'm going to go up here and I'm going to go to the next page.
That's right. And John, a lot of our teachers, when they create their own Google Docs and stuff, they really have like a good learning objective. Keep doing that for sure. All we're calling out is the academic language that needs to be said and heard. And of course, those double meaning words that come up and some engagement strategies. Keep going, John. This is good.
All right. Now, I'm just going to make a couple of comments here. This is the activate prior knowledge, oxymorons, and let me flip up to the content. Euphemisms and oxymorons are really kind of another way. They're almost like wordplay. We're trying to soften. We're trying to use alternate words. So the activate prior knowledge was just students recognizing that they do understand that in English we have like different ways we use the same phrase in figurative language and stuff like that. Now, can everybody see the type of text that's down here? This is very conversational text, isn't it? Okay. Now look up here. We've got more than one meaning. Suggested. There's one of our good academic words. Two meanings, sentences. Often you're going to find there's better vocabulary in the directions, the instructions, the words on the page, rather than the actual text down here. So make a judgment call what you're going to have kids read. We don't need to read every sentence in every lesson. It might take too long, but we can have them still read some of them. Okay. So students, often we use words that have more than one meaning. Okay. Now we got a little question here. Let's read together. Ready? Read. Write on your whiteboard which two meanings are suggested by these sentences. Suggested is like, what do we think they are? Now I'm going to do the first one. So here's the rule for EL or general lessons. The teacher does the first problem, the students do the second problem. So you're always modeling how to do it. Avoid that temptation of just asking the student to do something. Okay, this is very easy. You might get away with it, but later during a lesson when you have harder content, you can't. Okay, so I'm going to do the first one. So write that down. We call that mirror problems, match problems, rule of two, paired problems that try to put, especially in math, you solve one first and then the students solve one later. Okay, so students, I'm going to do this first one. I'm glad I know sign language. It's very handy. Okay, kids, let's think what sign language is. It's people talking using their hands. Now, we're trying to find two meanings of this phrase, very handy. Okay, so I'm going to read number A. People use their hands a lot for sign language. That's using the hand part. Yeah, very handy. So that could be one use of this. When something is useful, we say it's handy. That's a second meaning. It's very handy to have my cups nearby. So those really, I think, are the two meanings in this sentence. People use their hands for sign language, and people use their hands when you say something is handy. That could be or wordplay or a second use. So those are our two meanings for very handy. Okay, now we have a next one. Okay, so let's read it all together. Ready, read. I used to have a fear of hurdles, but I got over it. Now you can make a judgment class. If you think the class, a judgment call, class, I want you to write on a piece of paper, A, B, or C, and you need to have two of them. What are the two meanings of got over it that are suggested, they're hinted at in this sentence? Fear of hurdles, but I got over it. What are those two things? And write on your piece of paper or on a whiteboard. If you have nothing, write it in the chat. Okay, Christian, I see yours. You got to push it up closer to the camera so I can actually read it. Okay. So I see a lot of you wrote letters, so I want you to respond like this. The two meanings are, now let's do it this. The two meanings suggested are blank and blank. We all say that? The two meanings suggested are blank and blank. So practice your sentence for a minute and then tell me why you picked the ones you did. So let me see the whiteboards again. I'm trying to think if I got somebody that I saw who had a correct answer, because I want to make sure I call a correct answer. And I want to pick someone new. Okay, Christian, I see you. I may have called you before. Can you read your answers? I want the complete sentence. The two meanings suggested are blank and blank because. Make sure you're unmuted.
The two meanings suggested are A and C. A, people can overcome or get over their fears. That is implied because it mentions the word fears and they got over it. And C is also correct. In track, you have to jump or get over each hurdle. That is also implied because it is a double entendre. I believe it's a pun. And yeah.
Okay, I think you can see how we do this. Now, let me tell you where my sentence frame came from. It really comes from the question. So what are the two meanings? And I want that word suggested. The two meanings suggested are blank and blank. So see if you can try to get it. So you have a question like, what is the theme in the first passage? Your response should be, the theme in the first passage is blank because. They only need to write A, B, or C, or a couple of words, but get that complete sentence with the vocabulary. Okay, so I think I did this one, and then the students did this one. Now this is activate prior knowledge, but later during the lesson, I'm going to move up to a math lesson for a second.
Yeah, John, definitely, John, get to a math lesson as soon as you can, because we have to make sure we're conscious of our students here, right? But John, I got to tell you, here's my other issue I have with you. Sentence frames. I love sentence frames, but I know a lot of people push back because we really should be encouraging our students to come up with their own sentence frames and stuff. But but I know there's a thing about not enough background knowledge for them to sort of pull from it. Maybe they didn't have that in their last class. Can you tell me why you support the use of sentence frames using the new academic language so much, please?
Well, for one thing, we're teaching vocabulary in context. We're not teaching a vocabulary list, determine, correspond, separate. We're actually teaching as they show up in the lesson. And that's where these footnoted one comes. And you can just pick a few in the lesson and you can see them right there and pick it up. So we want to get vocabulary in every lesson. And remember I told you that we need the content vocabulary, the math vocabulary in this case, but also we need to use the other generic academic vocabulary. So keep your eyes open for vocabulary. And if ELs miss it, oh, by the way, when students have wrong answers, you're going to have to do a little analysis. Did they not understand the language or not understand the content? I mentioned common denominators. The student didn't know the word common, 1/4, 2/4, that has a common denominator of 4. And he got common as like ordinary, and he got totally confused and he couldn't solve the math question because he didn't know the English part of it. So be ready to correct English if you have to also. All right, I'm going to skip all this. Let's do right here. Now, this word, you see the beginning equation's got the word like equal in the beginning of it. So an equation shows two things that are equal. I've got the word states or tells, and you probably heard on TV. Can you state your name? Can you tell me your name? Expressions, that's the part on each side of the equation without the equal sign. All right, so I'm going to read this first one. Ready? An equation states two expressions are equal. Your turn, read. An equation states two expressions are equal. And here I've got an equation right here, and I got the two expressions, and they're equal. By the way, this is how you teach concept development. Joel, I'm going to digress here for a second. Okay. An equation, so I've got equation right here, two expressions, I've got two expressions and are equal, and I've got my equal sign. So this is how you do concept development, by the way. You take the definition and point to the example and show how all of that works. Okay, this is inverse operations. Let's read together. Ready? Read. Inverse operations are operations that undo each other. So we're going to read the mathematical term here. Inverse operations, addition and subtraction, multiplication and division. Can you read that with me? Addition and subtraction, multiplication and division. Now show me the symbol. They undo. So addition could what? Undo subtraction. Show with your hands. Inverse operations what? Undo each other. Okay, now this is activate prior knowledge. So we assume the students do know some of this already. So I'm going to solve the first one. And let me get rid of this. Okay, so let's read together. Ready, read. Solve the following two-step equation. Now, math teachers, show me your hands. I saw there's a couple of math teachers, aren't there? Okay, make sure the students are reading text. If you just do this on the board, and which is very easy to do, they're not reading any of the academic vocabulary or content vocabulary for math. And I think you know now, most of the state tests are basically, they're all written questions, aren't there? There's not too many where they just put a formula up and say, solve this equation. So make sure you've got some text for the kids to work from. This could be from your textbook or something you do on your own. Okay, so let's read the question. Ready, read. Solve the following two-step equation. So I'm going to use my inverse operations. Let's read the equation together. Math people, have the students read the equations. Let's read. Ready, read. 3x plus 10 equals 25. Especially doing inequalities and stuff, they don't tend to read them. So students, I'm trying to isolate the variable, which means the x, the unknown. I want to get over here by itself. So if I didn't have the 3 and the 10, so this 10 is what? We added 10. So show me what I can use, my what? Inverse operation. And we added, so I can go over here and use subtraction. So look what I'm going to do, and I'm just clicking on the screen here. I'm going to subtract 10. That's my inverse operation. Now, you remember in algebra, whatever we do, show me with your hands, whatever we do to one side, we have to do the other side to what? Keep the equation equal. I want to see all the hands up. Keep the equation equal. Okay, balance. Now, one of our norms was students had to participate, and to keep the students awake, among other things, make them do this. It keeps everybody with you. You wouldn't believe, I don't think you can talk more than 2 minutes and hold your students. The students are drifting, especially at home. So every time you make them do something, hold up a whiteboard, show me a gesture, answer a question, read with me, you're keeping them engaged. Okay, so I did it. So what are we gonna do next? I subtract from the other side. So now when I subtract these, the 10 minus 10 is 0. I don't need to write that. 25 minus 10 is 15. So I'm going to do my second inverse operation. 3 times 10. I don't see it in there, but we know that means multiplication. The inverse is division. So I'm going to divide by 3. I'm going to divide each side by 3. And I got my solution, x equals 5. Now I'm going to stop. This is activate prior knowledge. But if you were teaching this as original content in the class, and I just did as a teacher, write this down now. Your question is, students, how did I solve this? Explain where this 10 came from. Where did this 10 come? Where did this 3 come from? How did I get this? To do this, you have to model your thinking. If you just go up here and say, okay, so I'm subtracting this, then I did this, and now I've got my answer, I didn't model any thinking. So I think you heard what I did. I said, I've got 10. I need to what? Undo the 10. I even pointed over here. And then I said, now I've got 3 times x, so I need to what? Divide. And I did that. So the question now would be to ask somebody how I did it. So I know, Norman, you're the math teacher, aren't you? Can you explain these numbers? How did I solve this problem?
So to solve the following two-step equation of 3x plus 10 equals 25, you first subtracted 10 from both sides of the equal sign.
And what do we call that? We use a what and what?
It's an inverse operation.
Very good. Okay. What
Okay, and then you carried out another inverse operation. You now have an equation of 3x equals 15. Well, you only want one x, not 3 of them, as I usually tell my students. And so you have to divide by 3. And lucky for us, 3 goes into 15 quite nicely, and we come up with x equals 5.
Okay. So the cue here is I want him to use the words inverse operation, right?
Oh.
Keep the equation balanced and, right? Don't just say, we did 10, we subtracted, we did this. I want to get the vocabulary in there too. So I cued you for the
Okay.
vocabulary and you used it.
Okay.
All right, now this is activate part 9, but if this was the real meat of the lesson, I might call another couple people to do it.
That's right.
Okay, everybody, you're gonna have to get a piece of paper. And now this is the teacher over here. Well, this was supposed to be teacher, and now it's the students. Okay, students, get out your whiteboard or a piece of paper. I want you to solve this and then be ready to explain how you isolated the variable. That means you got the variable X all by itself and how you used inverse operations and why you did it. So quickly, everybody solve it on a piece of paper.
And then John, this will be the last one that we do here because
Right.
we do have to wrap up.
All right, let's just pick the first one, somebody who's got one very quickly. Jacqueline, I see yours. Can you unmute and read to the class what you did? And I want to hear the phrases inverse operation, keep the equation balanced, and a couple of our academic words.
So 3x plus 7 equal 28. So subtract 7 minus 7 or
Now, what do we call that? What did we call that when you subtract 7? You added 7, then we subtracted 7.
subtract 7.
Why did you subtract 7?
Inverse operations.
It's the inverse operation. See, you're gonna have to cue the kids to say that. It's the inverse.
Okay.
I'm gonna stop right there, but I think you get the idea. Force the vocabulary. I used the inverse operation, right? And then what? I kept it balanced, right? And I solved the equation. Joel, let me think how much time we've got. Maybe 5
Yeah,
minutes.
we're at the seconds here because we do have to prep for our second one, John. So if you want to do one summary.
We want the students to read as much as possible. When you solve one, they're going to answer in complete sentences. Blank, if you look over here. B is an example of a euphemism because we got the sentence frame right there. Okay. Blank is an example of an oxymoron because, and we got it, which is an example of an oxymoron. All right. Later, when we do this, the teacher is going to do the first one and the students are going to do the second one. We happen to have 3 on this page, so maybe the students could do the next 2. Okay, and you have to justify your answer. And I want you to, I would make the students write euphemism or oxymoron. Don't write E or O, write the whole word out. They've never probably written this word before. Show them on your whiteboard, then explain. You don't need to write the sentence, but you're going to justify orally how you got it.
That's right. We want to avoid those pronouns. That's for darn sure. John, we do have to let everyone go. I want to give one quick little announcement. Really quick light for everyone who gave me your email address and probably those who didn't. I'm just going to send everyone. Someone did request to see a little bit more of these high school lessons on this. We're going to send that to you. But once again, that wasn't our intent. Our intent is to give you some good ideas and some good strategies to reach our English learners in our classrooms here. So go ahead and start signing off there. We'll be following up with you guys shortly. Thank you all so much. John, I'm sorry to cut you off so quickly there, but why don't you say goodbye to everyone as everyone starts logging
All right, I
in.
think we got it. Engage the students a minimum every 2 minutes.
Yeah, grab them. Grab them.